This happened quite a while ago, but every time I think of the experience, it fills me with rage. So I thought maybe you llamas would like some light breakfast before the main meals of the day. Dear husband and I have been together for 8 years now, and my just-know mom has been harping on how we need to get married for about 7.5 of those 8 years. So when I call her up and tell her, hey, the man-beast and I don't want to wait anymore. We're doing this next month on X date at the courthouse, and you need to be there. She flipped in the best way, was so happy for us, and couldn't wait to be there with us. We talked about it constantly. The day before the ceremony, she texted me multiple cute outfits she could wear for photos we would take afterwards. A lot of women would hate how over the top she was, but it was honestly just nice she seemed to care so much. Now, before I get to the day itself, it's important to mention a few things. Dear husband has one family member living even remotely close to us, being his mother, 2 hours by car, who none of my family had met at this point. Because we were doing this at the courthouse in a small town, we were allowed a total of 5 guests for our ceremony. So, of course, dear husband invites his mother to be his witness and tells her she is allowed to bring a reasonable guest if she wished, considering she lives 2 hours away. I invite my mother and my grandmother as my +2s. And then dear husband and I invite our best friend, who basically introduced us and has been like a brother to me my entire life. Great group of people. Everyone seems excited. All good, right? Ha! The day comes. Dear husband and I show up at the courthouse extra early, only to find his mother and brother there, who his mother had flown in from states away to celebrate with us. Dear husband cries. I cry. It was honestly so nice to have him there to be a part of our union. Soon after, my grandmother and our best friend appear, and introductions are made. Excitement is in the air, and all we are waiting for is my mother. And so we wait. And wait. And wait. I finally give her a call, and my sister answers. Oh, Mom? Yeah, she's in bed. I'll get her. Mom groggily answers the phone, and I'm trying my damnedest to maintain my composure in front of this group of loved ones. Hey, so we're all at the courthouse, and mine and Hub's scheduled time is in about 10 minutes. What? For what? To get married. Oh, that's today? I'll be right there. Don't you dare go in there without me. Click. I wish I could say I had a shiny spine back then, but I totally gave in to that demand. So after getting off the phone with my mom, I basically babied out and started crying in front of everyone. Mother-in-law and grandma console me, with grandma basically making excuses and patting my shoulder, while my awesome mother-in-law tries her hardest to get my mind off my mother and on the wedding, which should have been my focus. After waiting around for another 10 minutes, we head to the waiting area outside the magistrate's office. There happens to be another couple there with a group, who were slated to get married after dear husband and myself. Dear husband explains that we're missing a relative and offers to trade slots with them, which they agree to. After around 30 minutes of waiting around, my mom finally shows up. Obviously hungover and reeking of cigarettes, wearing pajama pants, her work shirt from the night before that I assume she had slept in, and a jacket covered in what appeared to be motor oil. Keep in mind, this is not only my wedding day, but also her first time meeting my mother-in-law, so I was immediately pissed off and embarrassed. On top of showing up late, looking like a junkie, she had also brought my stepdad and sister along. To their credit, they looked embarrassed and were actually wearing nice outfits. Not only had my mom forgotten the date and time, but also apparently forgot that we had a guest limit. Of course, she starts not so subtly hinting that best friend should give up his spot for my stepdad. I thought these types of things were for family only. It's a shame that stepdad can't be a part of it. He was really looking forward to seeing you get married. You'd think that because they have a rule about the amount of people, they'd also have a rule that family members need to be there. By this point, dear husband had reached his breaking point and quips, You know, you're right. Stepdad should be a part of it. He dressed up and everything. Maybe you should offer your spot to him. That shut her up. And minutes later, we were called in and married without any drama. Because mother-in-law had traveled so far to attend, and brother-in-law was in our town for the first time, dear husband suggested everyone go out for lunch together after the ceremony, which Mom immediately turned down, as she apparently had really important plans made already. that she absolutely had to leave and get to right that second. So the rest of us enjoy a nice lunch and walk around the downtown area. And of course, hours later on Facebook, I see that the very important plans Mom had involved driving to her favorite bar, getting wasted, and then dragging Sis and Stepdad to the river to camp, with no camping gear. This entire poop show was the breaking point for me, and where I started the long road to very low contact, which would be no contact if not for Grandma, but that's some llama feed for another day. And that's the story of how my mom forgot my wedding. I was 18 and had just gotten out of high school when I met my ex, who was 24 at the time. Now that I'm older, I see that any 24-year-old that would want to date an 18-year-old is a total weirdo, but at the time, I thought I was cool because he was older. We had only been dating for 3 months when I had accidentally gotten pregnant while on birth control. He told me he was infertile too, by the way, if that points a better picture of the kind of guy he was. I was young and scared and was going to get rid of it, but him and his mother promised me they would be there for me and help me raise the baby, which I am really happy I decided to keep him because my child is the love of my life. But the next 3 years of my life after this is why I have been diagnosed with PTSD and am seeing a therapist. I'm just going to tell one story today of the delivery room incident. My ex had refused to work my entire pregnancy because he needed a break. I was working and going to nursing school to pay the bills, and his mom was helping with some of the bills because of her sons needed a break so bad. He's worked his whole life and he isn't ready to get a job yet. She had been continually escalating the entire pregnancy, to the point of coming inside the house without knocking when she knew I was there alone. She hijacked my baby shower and took all the items home so she could go through them first to see what she wanted for her house. Once screamed at me in the car for 10 minutes because I had asked her lazy POS son to get up and do some chores around the house since he was home all day. She yelled at me, "I'm his mother. You're not his mother. If you have a problem with him not doing stuff around the house, you come to me." One time, she randomly said, "I don't think my son would ever hit you," which she obviously knew how deranged her son was, but didn't warn me because he did end up doing it multiple times, breaking my eye socket and several ribs and serving jail time over it. Like I said, I was a scared, isolated 18-year-old that had just had her whole life turned upside down with an unplanned pregnancy my friends and family weren't supportive of and was leaning on this lady for help. She was nice to me until it was too late to terminate the pregnancy, and then she flipped and became this evil monster who thought I was stealing her son from her. She told me that she never hugged or told her son that she loved him until he started dating me because they just didn't have an emotional relationship. Like, lady, this is your child you're talking about. Anyways, there was a lot of other stuff that happened, but flash forward to the delivery date. I was totally tired of her crap, and her son was sort of on my side, sort of not. Just kept telling me she means well. She acts like that because she wants us to stay together. It was like I was in the Twilight Zone. I had set firm rules that no one besides him and I are supposed to be at the hospital for the delivery because she was acting crazy and I didn't want her to ruin my pregnancy even more than she already had. Well, my mother accidentally lets it slip to the lunatic that I had been having contractions all day. It's about 10 p.m. and I'm talking to my ex about taking me up to the hospital because the contractions were getting closer together when Psychopath shows up. Apparently, my ex had been letting her know what was going on, so she decides to invite herself over. She talks us into letting her drive us up to the hospital. I know, I was weak, young, and totally vulnerable, and had been beat down by them at this point, and make sure to hit every single pothole on the way to the hospital, while I'm in the back seat yelping in pain every time she hits one. She says, "Bumpy road, isn't it?" I know this woman. She never hits a pothole because she loves her car. My ex finally tells her, "Mom, stop. Can't you tell it's hurting her?" Anyways, we finally end up getting to the hospital and they send me home saying come back when my water breaks. My piece of crap ex falls asleep, leaving me to labor for 5 hours by myself. Finally, around 3 a.m., my water breaks and I have to drag him out of bed to get him to take me to the hospital. We get there, are getting checked in, when the front desk calls back and says we have a visitor. I look at my ex and was like, "Are you serious?" He says he didn't tell anyone we were there. His mother had been driving past our house all night to see if we had left. I'm in an extreme amount of pain at this point. I'm just trying to breathe through the contractions. He leaves me to go talk to his mom and comes back while I'm trying to get myself cleaned up in the bathroom and tells me, "Why are you acting like such a ducking sea? This is my mother's first grandchild. She just cares. Let her come back here." I'm sweating, covered in my own blood, and can barely breathe every time a contraction comes. Just to get him off my back, I tell him she can come back once I get the epidural. It took them almost an hour to get my epidural, and she's repeatedly calling back the whole time, asking, "When can she come? What's taking so long? Blah, blah, blah." Finally, once the epidural is in, I call my mom and tell her what's happening while I'm crying because I just feel so violated and disrespected at this point. My mom says she's coming up and will control the yappy bee. A few other terrible things happen, like her convincing my ex to leave my side to go home and get some rest because he deserves it after all the hard work he's done, while she sits at the hospital with a group of her friends keeping her company in the waiting room. Remember earlier in the post when I told everyone ahead of time I didn't want anyone at the hospital besides me and my ex? Flash forward to me pushing. I'm trying to rocket this kid out before my epidural wears off. The doctor shows up and looks at me and says, "I don't know why she's standing outside the door with her camera, but I told your mom she needed to go back to the waiting room because it's a safety risk." My jaw drops. I'm totally floored. I knew it wasn't my mom, it was his. I looked at him like, what the duck? He told me he had no idea. I deliver my son in a whopping 20 minutes, and during that time, she has the front desk call back 3 times to see what's taking so long. I was in love with my son and totally swimming in all the after-labor feel-good hormones that I didn't even give a crap what that crazy bee was doing anymore. My mom later updated me that my crazy ex-mother-in-law was sitting in the waiting room the entire time telling her friends how she's going to convince me to formula feed. That next week, she's going to take my son for overnight. That her son is a saint for dealing with me. My mom told her to watch herself after that one. And that she's staying the night at the hospital with us. My mom really had my back and told her absolutely not. None of this was what I wanted and refused to leave the hospital until Crazy Town came with her. After this experience, I grew a set of balls and really started standing up to her and her POS son. Of course, she started painting herself as the victim and told her family that I ruined the birth for her first grandchild for her. But I no longer let her bully me around, even though she tried really hard. She ended up apologizing to me maybe a year later and told me how embarrassed she was that she acted like that towards me and that her plan was to break into the delivery room and take pictures of the baby because she felt it was her right, and that she was mortified that she basically almost saw my V against my will. I told her, thanks but no thanks, B. I have a lot more stories if you guys want to hear them. It's kind of therapeutic to get them out. First, let me say, I'm really writing this from a place of laughter. It's been so long since I have posted to this sub because we went no contact for a while, and now somehow she has wormed her way back in. Anyways, I am currently 9 months pregnant. Having contractions now, actually, although I'm still at home because they are minor and far apart. This is our first baby together. We told everyone who has asked about our labor plan that we aren't inviting people to the hospital during labor and delivery, except my 2 sisters, one of which will film the birth and the other will capture photos. And that we will invite people to come visit whenever we feel settled and ready. My mother-in-law heard this plan but didn't think it applied to her. She tells my husband today that she has her hospital bag packed. My husband clarified that she will not be invited to the labor or delivery, and we will let her know as soon as we are accepting visitors. Welp. Her response to this was, of course, freak out, and explain that she witnessed the birth of her other grandchildren, and that if we do not allow her to witness the birth, she is not going to love our child as much as other grandchildren. Yes, she will withhold love. I don't know how you withhold love from someone, from her own grandchild, to prove some kind of point to us. What kind of human being says they aren't going to love all their grandkids equally? I don't know what to even say besides, okay, I guess love them however much you can under the circumstances. Not like my kid will really see her much enough to notice. What a lunatic. That's all. Short and sweet version. She showed up to the hospital anyways, shortly after I gave birth, and hemorrhaged. I was in bad shape. My husband met her in the hall and told her she couldn't come in or see the baby and needed to leave. She argued, of course, but eventually left. My baby girl is now 4 months old. She's perfect in every way, and I'm doing really good. We've had a few bumps in the road, like when we told mother-in-law that we were not baptizing the baby, for instance, but nothing too bad. Now to the next issue. Mother-in-law has a wall of pictures of her own kids and other grandkids when they are babies/toddlers, where they all did the same photo shoot, at her demand of course, of the baby sitting on the American flag, draped in an American flag, holding a little flag, wearing flag clothes. For Christmas, she asked when we wanted to schedule the flag photo shoot. We were like, we're gonna skip that. She's like, you can't. It's a tradition. All my kids did it. All the other grandkids did it. We simply said, okay, well, we aren't doing it. It's not our taste. It's a little too nationalist, and we don't like it. However, I offered that if we did some type of 4th of July photo shoot, I would give her a copy of the pic. I will post in the comments what kind of picture I was considering. Anyways, she is upset and said that won't work. It needs to be the exact setup with all the flags. She said, you either will let, or I'm going to have to kidnap her. So now I'm like, should I give in to just shut her up and not deal with this since it's only a photo and doesn't hurt anyone? Or should I stick to my guns and say we don't like that photo, it's tacky and weird to us, and we aren't negotiating with her? If I give in one time, she will think that throwing a fit will get her way. Son is 4.5 weeks old. Immediate problems with the mother-in-law started mid-pregnancy. So my wife and I had been trying to have kids for a while. 2 miscarriages last year. Needless to say, this pregnancy had been planned out from the start. Part of the plans were, of course, the delivery itself. My wife did not want anyone but me and her friend/photographer in there during the delivery. The rest of the family would be given updates and allowed in after we had spent some bonding time with our son. It's worth pointing out that the last part is hospital policy regardless, which we didn't know at that time. We didn't want people waiting in the lobby because I was not going to be out there dealing with their emotions and needs during the whole ordeal. My singular concern was to be there with my wife and child. We had been telling friends and family this from an early stage of the pregnancy. Every single person we told that had all unanimously said, okay, no problem. Because why should it be a problem? Everyone except my mother-in-law. She would always say, no, I'm going to be there. You can't keep me away. We would resist, but as time went on, it started becoming more and more heated. Mind you, mother-in-law has a lifelong history of being controlling and abusive towards her children, so this isn't new territory. The week my wife was due, this all turned into actual arguments and all-out hostility. She began calling me a sperm donor, claiming this was all my attempt to shut her out, etc. We started getting screenshots of messages from family members where she has started a complete smear campaign against me and was trying to turn her entire family against me. Even more confusingly, she had tried that with my own mother. So my wife ends up giving birth late at night with a surprise C-section, while our son ends up in the NICU for a couple of hours. My wife was out of it, and I was trying to bounce between her and our son. All the while, mother-in-law was apparently going berserk because we weren't dealing with her needs. Next thing we know, she shows up at the hospital in the middle of the night causing a scene. Security rightly stopped her at the entrance and didn't allow her up. Mind you, my son and I had finally been reunited with my wife about 20 minutes prior to this. The hospital, as mentioned, doesn't even allow calm, rational visitors within this time, let alone crazy ducking lunatics in the middle of the night ranting and raving in the ER lobby. So of course this was, once again, my fault. I set up the hospital regulations. Silly me. Now, it's important to note that my wife had tried at every step to mitigate this disaster, even so much as trying to talk her mother down while she was in labor, telling mother-in-law to come around 8 in the morning so that she can bring her boyfriend and son. Not, come back when I finally rested from being in labor all night, just come at a reasonable time with the rest of your family. So the attacks continued. We had local PD come in and we tried to get a restraining order. Still need to get a copy of their report. But the hospital is in a different county than where we live. They suggested contacting the PD where we live when we leave the hospital. You bet, I called them within an hour of being home, But that department said they couldn't do anything unless mother-in-law actually broke the law. But we've at least began building a paper trail. One incident with hospital security, once with First PD, one with our local PD. Since then, we have had further attacks on our character, which my wife has fought back on as much as possible. All of these decisions were hers from the beginning, and she has tried to correct mother-in-law's version wherever possible, yet mother-in-law uses it as an easy attack against me. Mother-in-law has still not seen my son. Mother-in-law is currently not welcome around my son. Mother-in-law will go to jail if she so much as tries to come around my son at this stage. There have been enough written notices and contacts with law enforcement to give us the legal paper trail. After witnessing her abuse her children for years, I will never let mother-in-law around my child so long as she continues to act this way. She will certainly never watch my child. There will be no unsupervised visits. I have zero regrets that she has never met her grandson. He has had so much quality time with his extended family. Everybody has been so happy to meet him, and he is a very happy baby. He is missing nothing.